Another tweet that Max put out saying Wolf Richter put out Intel to get $23 billion in government grants and loans plus $25 billion investment in tax credits to invest $100 billion in the U.S. after washing $94 billion on share buybacks. Massive handouts to the richest companies to put semiconductor production on U.S. soil. So this was in wolfstreet.com. And it shows the share buybacks. And then what Max posted was 2 words: absolutely criminal.
Yeah.
Which this, I got to tell you, this is why I love doing the show. This is why I love talking to you, is you break down. So if I'm just some guy, and I'm more knowledgeable than amigo.
Shut the fuck up. Shut up.
So
I got the kitty mic now. It's like I got the kitty mic. I'm at the kitty table. Hello, I saw she's baby mommy. I like this podcast. This is the show. Okay, well, hopefully this is working. But nevertheless, I mean, if it's down here, I know it's not good, is it? I mean, is it sound? Do you think people can hear me down here?
I think they can.
Hello.
You know how to project.
Absolutely criminal, so what company is it again? I'll tell you everything's going on.
This was Intel was getting $23 billion in grants and loans.
All right, Intel. Okay, yes. Intel, they make chips, right? And of course, it's a very, very big name, very famous company. The former CEO, I believe he's invented, he's a huge technology titan in Silicon Valley. And they famously said, that he's talking about paranoia. You have to be paranoid. I forget his exact quote, but it's like, if you're not paranoid, you're going to get crushed by the competition. And anyway, so Intel, they make chips. And the thing about it is this. Corporate America, over the past 20, 25 years, has been losing money, hand over fist. But you would never know it because the earnings that they report are denominated in the number of shares outstanding that are constantly shrinking because they buy back their own stock. Okay. Right? So a company buys back their own stock to goose the share price. And even though the earnings could be less than they were the year before, share price goes up because the earnings that they are reporting are over a smaller number of shares. So you suddenly went from $1.50 in earnings to $2 in earnings, but your shares were reduced, the number of shares. And of course, the problem with this is that the company is not spending any capital on R&D. But Intel is a chip manufacturing company. Are they spending money on developing new chips? I mean, why did NVIDIA, this new company, this upstart that came out of nowhere, suddenly it's worth trillions of dollars, and they just introduced this new $30,000 GPU chip that's beating all the competition? Where was Intel during all this? Well, they're nowhere to be seen because they spent all their money buying back their own stock, right? Why do they buy back their own stock? Because the executives have stock options that are tied to the price of the stock. If you're an executive at Intel, you just got hired and they said, well, here's your salary. You're going to make $5 million, $10 million a year. And here's 2 million stock options. And the price is tied to the last current price of the stock. Well, guess what? If you can make the stock price go up by reducing the number of shares and making the earnings look a lot better, your options go from 50 cents to $20. Now you're going to cash out your $20 options. Now you got 2 million of them times $20. That's a lot of money, right? So it's stock options being gamed by stock purchases of the company, of their own stock, which, by the way, was totally illegal up until Reagan's time for obvious reasons. You're disincentivizing the company from making profits that come from the organic business operations of what that company is supposed to be doing. The company should be manufacturing chips, not gaming their accounting by buying back their own stock to make the executives rich. Okay, that's obviously, for good reasons, had been illegal for up until Reagan deregulated it and brought it back after it was in, on the illegal side of things. And so here, the company therefore does not have, they're eating their own seed stock, right? They have no new products. They have no new initiatives because all that money went into buying back their own stock. And so now, because they also use their money to buy influence in Washington, they'll get their Washington puppets to pass laws to claim that, well, the chip business is a strategically important industry in America. You know, China's our threat. China's our existential threat. China could be making a chip. China stole our chip companies. They stole all our chip technology. We got to get chips. We got to get our own chips. We need China chip, China. So they'll say, the federal government will say, well, you are bankrupted yourself by stealing all the money through stock options and stock buybacks. So we're going to take all that money, you know, that 50, 60, 70, $800 billion you stole, and we're going to just print that up over the Treasury and give you $800 billion as an incentive to go make new chips, to do the business that you should have been doing all along. Right. And they're like, OK, we'll take your free money and we'll go make these chips. And we'll, by the way, we're going to start buying back more of our own stock with the money you just gave us anyway. Like, we're not going to make the chips. We're not going to do anything we're going to do. We're just going to use it to buy back our own stock anyway. So the criminal activity will continue without any interruption anyway. But we'll make it sound like we are doing something in the best interest of shareholders or best interest of the company, the country in which we operate, that we're supposed to be engaged in economic boosting activities as part of the social contract that exists between the governing bodies and the people being governed. But we don't care about that. We just want to treat ourselves like lords who deserve everything, and everybody else is a serf, and they can just try to pick, you know, peanuts out of squirrel shit to survive because we don't care. And so that's what that story is all about. So, you know, stock buybacks are a completely counterproductive plague in corporate America. That should be outlawed. You know, it had been outlawed. But you know, this is the problem in America. This is why the middle class is being wiped out. This is why cities are decaying and falling apart. This is why there's no infrastructure build out. This is why roads are collapsing, tunnels are collapsing, because all the money's being looted, all the money's being stolen, right? My theory is that after 9/11, the rich in America decided to essentially grab what they could and run. The looting starts at the top. When you see looting on the streets in San Francisco, it's just mirroring the looting happening in the CEO suites and the C-suites of corporate America. They are the biggest looters of all. And they game the system with accounting fraud and money printing, and they loot. And they're just trying to loot whatever they can, and they know it's going to collapse, and they see it collapsing, but they just want to grab what they can right now because 9/11 scared everybody. Whether they want to admit it or not, 9/11 scared America shitless. We never recovered from 9/11, in my opinion. And those who are in a position to loot have been looting. In the old days, even the robber baron days, the Carnegies, the Mellons, the Rockefellers, they built libraries. They felt a public duty to.
They gave some back. They gave a little bit back, you know.
They did. They Carnegie Hall.
Scholarships, hospitals.
Education, hospitals.
Yes, they made. They went, we have to give back to the infrastructure, to the city. Mm-hmm. And maybe some of it was ego. I want my name on the big building. But still, again, you go through New York City, these buildings are amazing. Right. And they serve the public in general. And now these guys now don't, they take a nickel out of a baby's hand. They're awful.
There's no social responsibility. I mean, so that's the robber barons look good compared to these robbers. You know, these are just like thugs. You know, the robber barons, you know, they had to go through, you know, Teddy Roosevelt busted up the trusts, the trust busting that went on. And Teddy Roosevelt's an interesting character because he betrayed his class. You know, he was born in a wealthy family, but he ended up really going to taking these guys to task and doing the trust busting. But in the case of, let's say, Standard Oil, you know, on the Getty fortune, they broke it up into like 20 different companies, which made him fabulously more wealthy than he would have been had they not busted up. Just like the Ma Bell telephone company. When I was on Wall Street, we broke up Ma Bell. The telephone company, AT&T, had a monopoly on telephone services. And then MCI introduced long distance telephone discounting. And that was really a seismic change in the telecommunications industry in America. And MCI was a really hot stock on the NASDAQ back in 1983, when we were buying MCI. And so this forced a breakup of Ma Bell into the baby bells. So, but each one of those baby bells became bigger than the original Ma Bell. And then I think they've gone through a wave of reconsolidation. And like much of the old monopoly has been reconstructed anyway. And this is another thing. You have conglomeration and deconglomeration trends on Wall Street. So like Gulf and Western was a conglomerate, and then it got deconglomerated. And in the way these waves come and go, and they used to make it's encouraged by bankers. Bankers they do conglomerations because there's economies of scale. So you need to acquire this and this and this and become a conglomerate. And then 5 years later, they say, well, this division would be better off if it was separated and traded separately under its own stock symbol. So you're going to deconglomerate. So then they break it all up again. Then
they did the airlines. The airlines did this. They there was a strength. Same thing in the 80s. There was like 3-4 airlines. They broke it up. All these other airlines popped out.
Yeah.
Continental and America West and all this. And then as someone who's flew a lot in the last 20 years, I saw, all these airlines, all of a sudden, United is now the combination of like America West and Continental and what was that one out of Philly? Some other American.
Yeah.
Like now we're back to 3-4 airlines again.
Yeah, they've been reconglomerated, right? So I mean, there's another side of the story, of course, is that in the airline business, we brought in the discount airlines, which brought in affordability to air travel, which hadn't been because they were operating as an oligopoly. In phone services, long distance services were made cheaper. And then we went into voice over internet protocol and phone became free. Essentially, phone calls became free. And so there's that side of the equation. Yeah, and these two are in constant tension with each other. But it's obvious that in some instances, any cost benefit analysis for this type of stock repurchasing for a corporation is to be discouraged. And I give you a prime example, Boeing. So Boeing Airlines, every single day you see headlines that another Boeing plane is stuck on the tarmac. Yep. It's on fire. The wing fell off. They make a crash landing. It's the Supermax 737, whatever the actual product number is, the plane. People are actually booking around and trying to avoid booking on that particular plane. And it's a dangerous situation. Should not be, the FAA should not allow these planes in the sky. They're very old and they're falling apart. They're disintegrating. Why? Because Boeing engaged in stock buybacks to boost their stock, to make their executive stock options worth more. Okay, that's where that money went. Instead of servicing and getting new planes, instead of building new planes, instead of taking care of their prime business, which is providing safe air travel, they decided to buy back their own stock and line their own pockets. And now people are definitely in their safety and security is threatened with this horrible situation where it's genuinely, you can't get on one of these Boeing jets without fearing for your life. Yeah. I've been on, if you have to take two planes, it's like go from El Salvador to New York, you have to go to Miami and to New York. There's a connecting flight. I don't think there's a direct flight. And anytime you take a connecting flight, you're doubling your chance of having the plane blow up. That's the way I look at it. You have to take two planes. Like, I don't want to take a connecting flight because you're just adding another risk factor to me. It's like, I got to get on two planes. I mean,
I'm flying back to LA in April. Don't tell me this. Now it's just like, you got a better chance of blowing up.
I mean, avoid planes. I want to reduce the risk of dying in a plane crash. I want to take less planes. Now, again, there's another side of the story. The actual numbers of deaths by air travel are small compared to automobile travel, I believe, and compared to other forms of travel. Air travel is still, on the statistical basis, it's still safe. Yeah. Okay, if you look at that, so I'll make that caveat. I try to be reasonable in my rants. I don't like to be just completely off the reservation in Nutsville, right? I mean, there's always a caveat to be made.
You got to have a caveat for Nutsville. You gotta always have
I make that caveat, and so, but the bottom line is the stock buybacks are a really shitty way to make money for corporate executives instead of just actually creating new products and hiring people and giving them jobs. Like Boeing could have hired a bunch of people, built a bunch of planes.
Yeah.
And that would have given a lot of people a lot of jobs. And those jobs are well paying. And they would be in the suburbs somewhere, wherever Boeing's headquartered, like Seattle or something. And their kids would be at school and they'd be going to church on Sunday and they'd be having a nice roast, for dinner. But now mom's on OnlyFans shaking her tits. Dad's, addicted to OxyContin or fentanyl, sleeping in the alleyway with a needle in his arm. Little Jimmy's had his sex change to being a woman. And the fucking dysfunction is pinging toward extremism. It's like stock extremism is ripping of the fabric of American society.
No, it's true. You bring up a great point. That greed, that level of greed, think about that. The stock buyback, the concept of, hey, let's make a better product. And in order to do that, to stay with your Boeing example, not only all the people they could have hired, let's get better engineers. Let's make smarter, safer, cleaner. I mean, this is good. Increase our profit margin because fuel is. Let's find clean energy. Like, can we? There's biofuels. Like, can we find jets that are cleaner and better for the environment? Because not only would that save us money, that would be an amazing marketing tool. You're the first airline to go, we've got green jets. People would. So instead of doing all that, they just do stock buybacks. And this is the thing, this level of greed is so psychotic.
Yeah.
Because you give people decent jobs and decent money and you're paid well.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done studies. So money buys happiness up to about $150,000 a year, right?
Right.
So they're just between if you make 50 grand a year and then you're getting a raise to 150 grand a year, that can actually take some stress out of your life, provided you're smart with your money. Oh, wow, now you can take your kids on a vacation. But what's the difference between making $16 million a year and $16.1 million a year? How does that affect your life at all? And that 100 grand, you could employ one person, and $100,000 a year would wow, that could really change someone's life. I've made a pact with myself. If I ever make 7-8 figure income, I'll never pay myself more than $300,000-$400,000 grand a year. I will put the rest in charity or hire more people because what do I need? What do I need? A house with rooms I don't use?
It's true that at a certain income level, happiness quotient disappears. You said 150,000. The last time I looked at those numbers, it was around 40,000. So obviously inflation has impacted the minimum happiness quotient on money. But the point is that it's the amount of money you have or the income that you have to cover basics and to do some stuff. Once you achieve that, it's difficult to get happier with more money. And having been in the money management world myself for many years, most people with a lot of money have no idea even how much money they have. So if somebody has, let's say, 30 million or 35 million or 50 million, they literally have no idea what they actually have. Or they'll find an account with $20 million in it that they didn't know. This happens all the time. People die all the time and they find accounts with millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like most people with a lot of money, really, it's just stagnant somewhere and being ignored. And it's not really recycling in the economy at all. No one's doing anything with it because, as to your point, there's nothing really you can do it. More money, more problems. Like when you start to spend money, when you start to invest money, it creates a paper trail. You need people to handle that paper trail. You need to hire accountants to handle that paper trail. And it gets more complicated. And you spend your day pushing paper. Like you have to if you have a lot of money, you're managing your money. It's like a full-time job. And, the point of being wealthy is not to have a full-time job. But, so number one. Number two is you attract a lot of attention from people who have a very strong opinion about the fact that you have a lot of money.
Right.
And so now you're kind of dealing with people in a way that's uncomfortable, that you would prefer not to. You'd prefer just to be kind of anonymous, really. You don't want to be just like constantly talking to people about the fact that you've got a lot of money. And therefore, why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? And these people are starving and this is happening here and this is going on. You should do stuff. I think people should have the right to not do anything,
Sure.
Nobody should be able to have to do anything if they don't want to do anything. I mean, that's the most environmentally sound thing you possibly could do.
Mm-hmm.
My carbon footprint could be zero if I'm just sitting on the beach doing nothing. My carbon footprint is zero. Okay, how about that? I'm going to help the ecology by doing nothing. How about that? I'm not going to get on a jet. I'm not going to take a meeting. I'm not going to fill out a form. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to do absolutely jack shit. I'm not going to do anything. My carbon footprint is zero, except for maybe, the bananas I'm eating might generate a little, excess carbon into the atmosphere.
The daiquiri carbon. Carbon.
That's it. That's my contribution. As far
the buybacks, though, the buybacks are criminal, and that's the point. There's nothing wrong with making a bunch of money and enjoying your life, but when you're making money and people are getting screwed as a result, that's like awful. You make a great product and people buy it, and you make good money. Right on, go for it. But if you're just like, oh, I could help, but I'm going to screw people over in this corrupt thing that was legalized,
Well, this is where the left-right divide becomes interesting. We touched on it before.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of bad stuff you could say negatively about the right and about capitalism as such. Just like there's equally bad things to say about the left and socialism. And so, as somebody who's right of center, myself, I would say that capitalism is about competition, and you want competition because it develops into having better goods and services for society as a whole, right?
Yeah, look at all the amazing stuff that has been invented in specifically America, the apex of capitalism.
Okay, so if it's subsidized by the government's making choices, picking winners, as we hear, right? The results are historically been proven to be bad because they're not incentivized in the same way. But what happens is that in this capitalist society in America, the capitalists use their money to influence Washington, the people's representatives, to make it easier for them to game the system, to avoid taxes, to increase, like Nancy Pelosi is a good example. She's a public servant and
worth $150 million.
Right, $150 million by trading on inside information in the stock market. So that's a failure of capitalism to a degree. And it's a failure also of government to a large degree. So all of these institutions are failing. So it's not capitalism when you would say that stock buybacks are a bad idea. Well, anybody who's a serious capitalist would agree with you. It is a bad idea. And so we get, maligned on the right equally, just like the left gets maligned. You said, if an airline came out with green energy, that would be a great marketing thing. And it could be, but what happened is the green movement got hijacked by the woke people. So the woke people kind of glommed on to the green people, like Greenpeace became woke.
Yeah.
And wokeism is to socialism, or no, I say wokeism is to green initiatives what stock buybacks are to capitalism.
Great point.
Right? It's like they morph. Now in the U.S., we had a tradition of debate,
healthy debate
around the center.
Yeah.
Right. So we could say that here's the center is here, like these two tables coming together. So where are we differing here? And how the goal being we should be as close to the center as possible. You don't have to come over to the right. I don't have to come over to the left. But we should have a goal of being as closely aligned as possible, because that would be ultimately beneficial.
And I think, too, to add to that point, this is the thing, we've talked a lot about this off and on camera, is the other thing, a part of that equation that's completely missing in today's just arguing, I'm right, you're wrong, shut up, insult, whatever, block, that where we got to come to the center. But also the debate has to start from we both want to find a good solution for this problem. Like, not if we're getting into competition, like I'm going to beat you, then we're already starting at a wrong place. Then I'm not going to listen to what you're saying. You're not going to listen to me. But if we come from let's find a good solution. And again, this is bringing it back to Bitcoin. This is why I love Bitcoiners. We all know it's broken. We all can see it's broken. We know the central banks are a big part of the brokenness. And we know Bitcoin is a great solution. We can debate how it's broke, who broke it, what solutions, whatever. The libertarians, I like listening to libertarians. I don't agree with them on certain things because it's like, I'll give you a great example. So we're talking about the environment. California has some of the strictest automobile emissions regulations in the country, if not the world. And people are like, oh, it's too much government interference. Well, I drive around El Salvador and there's these trucks emitting these diesel fumes. And I'm like, we could use a little regulation here. A little regulation's not a bad thing. So like, if we can agree diesel fumes are bad, right? So let's find a solution. And the problem arises when I'm coming in or anyone's coming in with some sort of agenda.
Yeah.
And anything can get hijacked. Capital, Again, like I'm an environmentalist, but when I hear like these kids throwing mustard on paintings in the Louvre, I'm like, that's the dumbest thing.
Right.
It's like 20 years ago, these idiots, this environmental terrorist, they would set SUVs on fire. That's the worst thing for you guys. Are idiots. You're psychos. Right. And anyone can become a fanatic, whatever it is.
It's fanaticism.
Yes.
And so you have a basic idea. You're frustrated because it's not getting any traction. So you become more fanatical. And then pretty soon you're doing the opposite of what you think you're doing, blowing up SUVs or this type of thing, which is incredibly destructive to the environment. And I believe, as you're saying, that Bitcoin, as far as a green solution, is actually the greenest industry in the world, because the cheapest energy would be stranded energy and green energy, renewable energy, and that's what Bitcoin mining is doing. More than 50% of the Bitcoin mining is from renewable resources. Again, it's the most environmentally sound industry in the world. And, a year ago, people were saying that it wasn't, that they're burning up they're boiling the oceans and things. And then when the facts came out, you don't hear much about that. Liz Warren doesn't talk about the environmental thing about Bitcoin much anymore because it's been refuted. That's been debunked. Her theory that it's environmentally unsound has been debunked. Her theory that it finances illicit activity is in the process of being debunked, because it actually does not finance illicit activity. People engaged in illicit activities avoid Bitcoin because it's an open ledger that can be traced and tracked very easily.
Those guys that hijacked that pipeline 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They used Bitcoin. They stole money. They hacked something and stole it. And then they got Bitcoin. And that's how they got caught. It's because they found them on the blockchain. We're like, oh, these guys are guilty.
Yeah, exactly.